And Peru still does not have lithium exploitation, but we do have reserves. Uh, and in the case of Peru, the institution of the Peruvian state as the executive and legislative power have stated their importance, the importance of this exploitation, but the communities have stated that they do not have enough information of the magnitude of the project or the impacts that this could generate in the environment. Recently, um, there are several social protests requesting justice for people that were uh, killed in the protests of January and the March. And in this framework, the communities, apart from these requests, are demanding the Peruvian state for more transparency in lithium and the industrialization of the same, so the benefits of these activities can reach the area. These are communities that are in the category of uh, poverty and extreme poverty. Now, taking into account this context, we will have the participation of the panelists. First of all, we will speak about lithium mining in Peru. For that, we will have the intervention of Ward uh, Killing and Vito Cardelon. Both will present a summary of the report, um, the face of lithium and uranium in Puno, culture, health, and the rights of the community. Wyatt and Vito have 7 minutes to participate. Wyatt, thank you very much, Kathy, and good afternoon to all of you.
I'm a staff attorney at EarthRights International, and I'm just going to cover a few of the key findings in the report that we put together with Derechos, Humanos, y Medio Ambiente, our close partner in Peru. Let me just project my screen. I think I need to be authorized to project. Rosa, ¿me puedes dar poder de proyectar? ¿O Jimena?
Ya tienes autorización, güey.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So as I was saying, we worked closely with DHUMA in Puno through desk research, and also Puno made trips to the area of a proposed mine, a lithium and uranium mine. And we put together this report, The Face of Lithium and Uranium in Puno, Cultural Health, Community Rights, and Environment at Risk. The objectives of the report were basically to gather information that we could provide to communities, to the Peruvian state, to the public, international organizations, and civil society, because we were worried about the potential impacts of the project, and heard this from DHUMA principally, right, who is our local partner on the ground in the region. And we wanted to spread this information in order to help ensure that this current rush for transition minerals doesn't simply reproduce the same systemic rights violations that have been traditionally associated with traditional mining. So the proposed lithium and uranium mines are They belong to a company called American Lithium. It's a Canadian company. It acts through two subsidiaries, Plateau Energy, which is also Canadian, as well as Makusani Yellowcake, which is its Peruvian partner, Peruvian subsidiary on the ground. And as you can see from the graphic, Puno is in southern part of Peru, and the mines are in the northern part of the Puno region. There's two mines, Falciani project, which is lithium, and the Makusani project, which is uranium. And the company evaluates the net present value of the Falciani project at 1.55 billion, and the Makusani project at around 600 million. And the mines have a projected mine life of 33 years. So we're talking about some pretty massive mining projects. It's important to note that these projects are a little different from the lithium that's found in the lithium triangle to the south, because they're in hard rock and not in salt flats. And the technical economic reports that the company has produced indicate that there's millions of tons of the resource. It could be among the largest lithium mines in the world discovered to date. It's important to note that these mines haven't gone through an economic feasibility study yet, so it hasn't been shown that it would be economical to exploit them. So they don't have the classification of reserves yet. They are merely resources. So this project is being proposed in the context of in a region that has a poor track record on environmental governance and for mining projects, and has already had and seen a lot of impacts from mining projects that have gone unaddressed. So implementing these projects threatens to exacerbate a situation that's already pretty dire. Just to give you an idea of the amount of mining environmental liabilities in Peru that don't have a responsible party identified, let alone the generator of the party, it numbers in the thousands. And Puno is representative of the broader picture in Peru. In Puno and in Peru generally, there's a significant amount of risk of exposure to heavy metals among the population, and an inadequate system of special care for people affected by heavy metals. According to the economic and technical studies that the companies have produced thus far, potentially affected communities are identified as Quechua-speaking indigenous communities, the seven that are mentioned there on the left of the screen. They live at very high altitudes, dedicated to pastoral and agricultural activities. In the mining site, there's also a large number, I think it's the largest number of rock paintings from the Archaic period in the Americas that have been being explored and discovered since 2005 by a local technician. These are within the Makusani site and just adjacent to the Falciani site. There's still no environmental impact assessment for the extraction phase of the project, so it makes it difficult to determine what the environmental impacts will be. But our revision of the documents the company has provided and published, their technical and economic reports, we can say that there's potential impacts on biodiversity in the ecoregion and on local water sources, as well as on human health. The mining project, as well as other concessions that belong to the mining companies involved, are very near or overlapping with three important watersheds in Peru: the Inambari, Urubamba, and Azangaro. And that it kind of is a continuation of a problematic practice in Peru of headwater mining, because it obviously has impacts on water supply for local communities. The Peruvian subsidiary of American Lithium, Makusani Yellowcake, back in 2018, started exploration that was unauthorized without an environmental license and was sanctioned by the environmental authorities in Peru. for doing so. So they didn't get off to a great start in terms of compliance with environmental regulations that are applicable. Here you can see a map of the Falciani project, which is in yellow, the Makusani project, which is uranium, in pink, and then a expansion exploration project called Kelkaya to the west, about 6 kilometers from the Malchani project. And here in red, you can see the division of the different watersheds and all the mining concessions that are superimposed over those watersheds. Those aren't included in the projects, but they belong to some of the mining companies involved and pose a latent threat in the area. One of the most concerning components of the mining projects that are proposed is the presence of uranium in the Makusani Plateau. So the general manager of Makusani has said that uranium exists in a low grade throughout the entire plateau, and the Ministry of Mines in Peru has expressed concern that the lithium may be associated with uranium. So that's to say that even though one talks about a lithium mine, it's hard to escape the presence of uranium, which obviously has significant health impacts because it's radioactive. As I mentioned, there was an expansion project, Kelkaya, that to the west of the Falciani project, and that potentially threatens the Kelkaya Glacier, which is nearby. It's the world's largest tropical glacier, and the indirect area of influence, you can see it right here, and there are concessions that are superimposed over the top of it that also belong to American Lithium. But you can see here that the actual area of indirect influence of the expansion project of this mine overlaps directly with the Kelkaya Glacier. The companies involved have engaged with the communities, but this is not, there's no indication that this has taken place under the framework of a formal consultation, prior consultation process as required under international law, under inter-American law, which Peru is subject to because it's a signatory of the American Convention on Human Rights. The scope of the project suggests that any consultation process will include the duty to obtain consent for the projects to go forward. The companies that are involved say publicly that the communities are pro-mining in the area. And in the report, we identify some factors. We can't confirm this position, but we identify some factors that necessarily condition the posture of some communities in these situations, including a lack of information, detailed information on the projects that comes from formal sources. The reports have confirmed that the information in the area is largely informal and imprecise on social media. In these regions, they're very, very high in altitude, and there's little presence of the state. So the affected communities are dealing with state abandonment, and you also have that situation combined with various corporate social responsibility initiatives, like building football fields, for example, that tend to influence the way the communities see the project. We end the report with some recommendations. I won't go through all of them, but we urge the Peruvian state as well as the companies involved and international organizations that are monitoring the situation to work to ensure that there is free, prior, informed consent process undertaken in this situation, that there's an environmental impact assessment that's conducted by an independent entity, that there's relevant and adequate information provided to all stakeholders, that people continue to monitor the situation, and if there are any harms that do occur, to provide a remedy and facilitate remedy to those that have been affected. So with that, I'll hand it off to my colleague Vito to talk a little more about the situation of the communities in the region, especially as it relates to mining and mining lithium, and especially in light of some of the current political events that have been taking place in Peru, and an update on what has occurred since we issued the report, because it was now a little bit of time ago. So thank you for your time, and I'll hand it off to Vito.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Yes, to continue speaking about this report, we well, there are some points that we would like to highlight and why it has mentioned most of it, but one point is how lithium is discovered in Puno. Since 1990, from the 1950s until 1980s in this area of Carabaya, well, the Peruvian Institute of Nuclear Energy was searching for uranium. In 2005, there was a Canadian company searching for uranium. 2007, we had Global Gold, now called Matusane. In 2017, they discover lithium in the province of Carabaya, especially in Corani and Macusani. As we know, this company, Macusani Yellow Cake, is a Peruvian company, but it depends on Plateau Energy Metals from Canada. And this one depends on American Lithium, which is a Canadian company.
Preocupa bastante y en el estudio también hemos
We are concerned, and we have highlighted this
el tema del
point,
uranio son minerales asociados.
eh, associated minerals.
Litio y uranio son minerales asociados.
Lithium and uranium are associated metals.
Francisco, disculpa, Vito, por la interrupción. Francisco, por favor, silencia tu audio. Gracias. Vito, continúa. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. So in the study, we have tried to generate a debate and to mark or study if this lithium and uranium are associated. And Romulo Mucho, former Vice Minister Mine, says that to extract lithium is necessary to remove uranium from the surface. So that is the interpretation that we had in 2019. In 2021, Jaime Galvez, the Minister of Mine, said it would be more feasible if it wasn't associated to a radioactive metal, that is to uranium. And in 2023, Oscar Veran, current minister, said it seems that our lithium is without uranium. It would have been easier for us, it seems. He said the executive power is still not sure if these minerals are associated or separated. And then we have Ulises Solis, the manager of Macusana Yellow Cake. It says that lithium and uranium are separated. So that those are the different versions. Apart from that, well, as Wade said, our concern is with uranium, how we are treating this radioactive mineral. Maybe we can share a video, because based on this study that we report, we have received some answers in some events. Ulises Solis, the manager, says, and if we can run the video, please.
Un segundo, por favor.
Just a second.
Mientras vayan
While
acomodando,
they prepare the video, this is a version that we have gathered recently in the voice of Ulises, the manager of the Magosani project. And recently there's a third project, which is the Quilcaya, that was authorized for exploitation, that is close to the Quilcaya project. Let's run the video.
¿No se escucha el audio? Pues
Disculpe, ¿no se escucha el audio?
no logro escuchar.
We are not able to hear.
No, quizá puede, es por un tema técnico. Vito, quizá puedes continuar, por favor. Vamos a
Perfecto,
ver
entonces,
el tema
Let's
a ver,
técnico.
continue.
avancemos entonces. En todo
Okay,
caso, en este
let's
video,
continue. In this video that I wanted to show you
nos hace
what
entender
uh,
gerente general de la empresa,
the manager
Macusani
of
LLC,
Macusani
una cuestión
says that
sobre esta cuestión de que estos dos
he speaks about the
no
two
están
minerals and stating that they're not associated, and for the general manager,
no es un problema, ¿no? Lo que dice es que
uranium is not a problem. Uranium is in the water, and people live with the that mineral, or around that mineral. So this is still in debate, because we know that in the region of Puno, there are cases of contamination. For 58% of the population is exposed to heavy metals. Puno has a first place in anemia. In children, we have basins that are contaminated with heavy metals. 9 basins are contaminated in the area. Puno has mining, environmental.
En caso de Cuata, se ha identificado, ya se ha hecho el tamizaje y se ha encontrado personas en el cuerpo, tienen arsénico.
Cases, and we have found arsenic and mercury on some people, which is concerning. Now,
Y uranio.
when we speak about lithium
Ustedes también saben que
and the connection with uranium, we know that this is an open pit lixiviation project for in exploitation of 30 years. As Wyatt explained, this is located in the basin of Urubamba, Inambari, and Asangaro. But we need to make to highlight some points, because we have 4 points. One is the Macusani project, which is a uranium project, the Falchani for lithium, and the Kilkaya for lithium as well. And the rest are mining concession. Those mining concessions include Azángaro, Urubamba, and Inambari, but the three projects are located in Inambari.
Proyecto Macusani, que es uranio, proyecto Falciani y proyecto Macusani, ¿no? Y aquí también, no sé si el otro
And
día
here, I don't know if
el tema de
we
culturas
could
rupestres, ¿no?
see
En este
it, but
recuadro de color
in this
morado
area we have
muestro esto que se vincula
archaeological
con
findings,
los restos arqueológicos que
mostly
fueron declarados como
paintings
patrimonio
that
cultural
were
nacional
declared
en el año
as
2005,
national heritage
Ustedes también saben que
uh,
un área total de
ustedes
in
también
an area of
36.64 hectáreas, ¿no?
64
Y dentro de esto
hectares.
está el
And
proyecto
inside this, we have the Makusani project. Excuse me. You have 1 minute.
Gracias. Entonces aceleraremos.
So, and this is the other concern, which is the Quilcaya
Está sobre, también muy cerca,
project, which is very close.
Este es el
ustedes
proyecto de
pueden
exploración Quilcaya, que está
This is
ejecutado,
a Quilcaya exploration project, which
facilitado, se ha aprobado el proceso de
was
exploración.
approved
peor porque es uranio
for
y todo el mundo le tiene miedo a la radioactividad.
exploration, and it's
Señores,
very close to the Quilcaya ice peak or glacier.
Se encuentra en una
According to
superficie
the
de una
analysis,
distancia de
is less than 3
el tercer proyecto, ¿no?
kilometers
De
from the
la organización
Quilcaya.
Yellow. Pero a la vez, como vemos aquí en
But at the same time,
azules,
as we can
estas son las
see,
concesiones que también
these
pertenecen
are the
a
concessions
Yellow, ¿no? Y estas concesiones
that
se
belong to
sobreponen
Makusani Yellow
sobre
Cake.
todo el nevado Quelcaya, ¿no? Aquí es un gráfico interesante, ¿no? Entonces, con eso concluyo, Caterina.
So
Muchas
with
gracias.
this, I close my presentation.
Muchas
Thank you.
gracias. Muchas gracias,
Thank you
Vito. Muchas gracias, Wyatt.
very much, Vito and
Ahora
Wyatt.
vamos a pasar a abordar el tema
Now we will
del
speak
litio en
about
Chile y
lithium in
Bolivia.
Chile and Bolivia.
Como primera participación,
The
como
first part is a panelist.
vamos a tener la intervención de Francisco
We have the
Mocada
intervention of
Nola, de la
Francisco
unidad de
Mocada
ambiente del
from
Consejo
the
del Pueblo
unit,
Atacameño.
from the
Tienes 8
Atacame
minutos para
people.
tu
Francisco,
intervención.
you have 8 minutes.
Francisco.
Sí, disculpa que tuve que cambiarme de lugar, te voy a bullar. ¿Se escucha yo, no?
No te preocupes.
Can you
Te
hear me?
escuchamos.
Ya, dime el segundo que...
Te es- Te escuchamos. Y si puedes activar tu cámara, estaría genial.
Sí,
Por favor.
estoy buscando algo. Ah, está bien, sí. ¿Cuál es la presentación? Estoy buscando una presentación corta. Mm, Ahora sí, voy a ver el Zoom. Se veía, ¿no?
Sí, te vemos, Francisco.
Ay, sí. Voy a proyectar. 8
Listo.
minutos, vamos a
Mientras
hacerlo rápido.
Francisco
Well, Francisco
proyecta su presentación,
projects
quiero
his
darles
presentation.
al
Let's
público
remember
tenemos
that we
interpretación
have
simultánea. Tenemos
simultaneous
interpretación
translation.
simultánea
We
tanto del
have
español al inglés.
interpretation from Spanish
También
to English
tenemos
and
interpretación
as
simultánea
well
del español
from
al quechua.
Spanish to
Puede
Quechua.
ir, si quiere escuchar
If you
el
like
evento
to
en
listen
directo,
to
puede
the
ir a la superior de la
event in Quechua,
información
you
y
can go
buscar
to
la
Zoom
interpretación en portugués y
and
allí va a poder escuchar el
click
evento en quechua.
on
Y
in
si quiere
Portuguese.
escuchar el evento
So
en inglés, de
I
igual forma
repeat,
puede
Quechua is
hacerlo.
under
Puede ir a la
Portuguese
sección de interpretación y ubicar la
in
interpretación
the
en inglés.
interpretation icon.
Ahora sí, entonces le doy pase a Francisco para su intervención. Gracias, Francisco.
Ya, gracias. Bueno, buenas tardes, pido disculpas.
Thank you.
Un retraso. Primero que nada, mi nombre es Francisco.
First of all, I'm
Soy
Francisco
coordinador de ambiente del
Mondaca.
Consejo
I'm in
Pueblo
charge
Licanantay.
of,
El
um,
pueblo Licanantay está ubicado
I'm
en
from the
los
people of
ríos de
Licanantay,
en
which
el
is close to
departamento del
Antofagasta,
sector de la provincia del Loa.
the province of
Por ejemplo,
Aloha.
Pueblo Atacameños es una asociación de
Atacameños is an association that groups 18 indigenous communities in this basin in the area of San Pedro Atacama, the 18 communities that have associated to be able to unify certain criteria. In this case, lithium. But as you can see, we have the Atacama Salt Flats, and the area in red are the areas where we have extraction of salt, and there's extraction of lithium. The sectors, even though they seem that like a desert, there are several protected areas and important areas. The salt flats are wetlands, and product of this extraction that exists since the year 85, not only for lithium, iodine, and potassium. That's why we are endangering the areas of Agua Caliente. This is the second lithium reserve, and this area has an ecosystemic value with a great biodiversity. The communities still protect the area. We have, of course, temperature changes in the environment. For example, what is in red, excuse me, in black, all of this is a national reserve. Even though there is many concessions, and what I'm going to cover are the problems of lithium. Lithium is extracted from salt flats, as I said, always related to copper extraction, and these wetlands have been supplying water for mining, and now they are going to increase the extraction to get the lithium. So this salt flats are in risk. One of those salt flats was actually dried, and now it's in recovery the same way in the south of Atacama. This is San Pedro de Cava, and in the south, wetlands that still in conflict. Three companies are in conflict. One of the biggest cases for environmental damage. And extraction, they extract the water, evaporate to obtain salt to be able to refine it to lithium carbonate. This is allowed in Chile. There are plans not to take deeper, even though those rules we have seen there's changes in the years, and there's added to the environmental legislation that is really deficient. The studies are performed by the same companies showing that there are no effects, but we have 4 companies in this basin for copper and lithium are in the tribunals because we believe that with this transition, energetic transition, we are still not speaking about the effects. To have a car with no emissions, we need to generate CO2. So the lithium boom, uh, uh, we still have many questions because we uh, have to produce tons of CO2 to obtain one battery. So we have been planning and reviewing what we wanted for the territory from the care for the ecosystem. And we developed an environmental office that has 4 pillars, including the patrimonial and ecosystemic value, but also the scientific aspect. We have a technical unit that is in charge of protecting the environment and confronting all these issues, especially with water. And I know that we have provided a training to the community since 2018. We started uh, training people of different ages of the community. We're trained for several months in water monitoring, and we have been generating the values through the project. Nowadays, these people are able to monitor water, and we have our own information since the state does not have the capacity to do it. We have achieved that. We have we are creating we here where we created the technical capacities. In 2019, we started taking data in the territory, and in 2022, we started generating information, technical information, and now we have the capacity of providing information and debating in the companies. We reached the tribunals with technical information, and this is what we want to continue improving in this in situ lab to be able to defend the territory and deliver knowledge. And this is what I want to show as an introduction. And facing these key aspects, we are searching for autonomy. Yesterday, I was participating of a seminario from the OECD, and we were speaking about the decision-making process by the communities. We can have plans and ideas, but if you are not part of the associations, it does not help. Uh, it is important that the states understand that the communities are part of the ecosystem, part of the water, and they don't see this um, the or the systems of water are not an object, they are part of ourselves.
Gracias. Muchas gracias,
Thank you.
Francisco, por
Thank you,
su
Francisco, for
exposición.
this
Ahora
presentation.
vamos a darle el pase a la intervención de Williams Colque Bernal,
Now,
del colectivo
William
de
Jorge
Derechos
Bernal
Humanos con base
from
en
the
Potosí, Bolivia,
collective Human Rights in Potosí, a collective that has communication with the Pasto Grande community of Bolivia, a community that was affected by the lithium extraction in Bolivia. Williams,
Tienes 8 minutos, por favor,
you
para
have
tu
8
intervención.
minutes.
Ahora sí. Hola, hola. ¿Sí?
Hi,
¿Se escucha, no?
Sí,
can you hear me?
sí,
Yes.
Soy William Colque,
I'm William Colke, coordinator of the collective Empoderate, it's a collective that supports human rights. We're working in the area of the Lipes, especially in the salt flats. What I want to show you in this map is the where is the area of intervention and which organization, social organizations exist. The Salar Uni, there are two type of organizations. One is an organization called Fructas, and another one is the Nación Libres. Both are concerned with the with extractivism, and the biggest concern is on contamination of water and the process of uh, destructure of structuring. They understand that geopolitics of lithium has support of the state and the companies, and having big traces of lithium now they are interested, or the state is interested, and we always have an interest mining in our lithium. And there was a company called Tierra that produced borax. At this time, San Cristobal is the company is concerning the
A pesar de que en nuestra constitución política existen recursos
communities in this area. Now, even though there are resources that support natural resources and generate coadjuvation to originary people and having data and knowing that the salt flats contain these resources, it is important that this is a system that has life in itself.
Información que se oculta desde el
And this is information hidden by the state, by the organization, private organizations that have that information. So what we have is that from the year 89 to 2019, there were processes of resistance from the local organization. One side, based on FLUCAS, which is the regional federation,
que ha jugado un rol muy importante
that played a very important role in this process, especially in the participation, the construction of the new constitution of the state. In Bolivia, we have approved a series of laws and regulations to define
para
fiscal areas and to define the strategy
esas normas han sido
These regulations have been resisted and many
por
times
lo que
modified
se llama
by this organization called Fruitcas.
Pero es importante que el 2007
But it's
los
important that in
diputados de la región y entidades
2007, the
sindicalistas
uh,
han propuesto una nueva
congressmen
perspectiva
have
política
proposed
de
a new
explotación
perspective
del
for
servicio
industrialization
de
process
recursos de
of
salmuera en
the
Tierras de Uyuni,
salt
¿no?
flats of Uyuni,
Solicitando la creación de una empresa
requesting the
pública
creation of
estatal
a
de
public and
indigenizada.
social company
En algún
uh,
momento esto se
in a
aprobó
certain
y
moment that
el
has
gobierno
made
ha
an echo,
promulgado una
and the
norma y
government
se ha
has
creado una
um,
entidad dedicada
regulated
a
and
este
created an
proceso.
entity dedicated to this
Bien,
process.
¿qué pasa ahora? El presidente Arce
Now,
lo
what
que hace
happens
es
now? The
fortalecer la
President
estrategia
Arce
boliviana
has
desde esa
strengthened
perspectiva estatal.
uh,
Eh,
this position,
se está implementando esta
and we are
estrategia con
implementing
la
this
contratación
strategy.
el 30 de junio de una empresa que se llama
And
que va a invertir, según la prensa,
hiring a company that will invest
en complejos de litio.
$1.5 million in
Y
a
en este
lithium
proceso, a
complex.
partir de
And
hace
in this
3 años,
process,
nace
um,
o se
is
reorganiza,
born
se
or is
reconstituye dentro de la
reorganized
nación Lites.
the
Estas comunidades se organizan
nacionalitas
a partir de los ayllus,
by
a partir de las
the
marcas.
IUs and the
Esa gran
communities.
tierra de los Lipes está
This
compuesto por
is
53
composed
comunidades,
by
¿no?
53 communities,
Y
and
fue creado fundamentalmente en
it's
función de una
integrated
organización nacional que se llama
by a
CONAMAT, que en este
national
momento tiene una sede
organization
en la
called
capital.
CONAMAT.
Están en un proceso de reconstitución
They're in a
política
process of
como antes de la colonia
reconstitution,
y actualmente su lucha
and
pasa
currently
por
their
una serie de
struggle
interrogantes que le hace al pueblo
is
boliviano,
based
¿no?
on a series
Como por
of
ejemplo, ¿cuál va a ser la
questions
participación de las
for
naciones
the
en los beneficios de la explotación? Esos son
year one
uno de los
of
diálogos que hace
them, or one
esta
of these
comisión,
dialogues,
donde,
is where
donde han tenido procesos de diálogo,
they've
según lo que se dice,
had
con
a process of
la
dialogue
institución
with
responsable en el
the
tema de litio,
responsible
LLC y
institutions.
LLC,
In the case of lithium, would be the
tienen una fuerte
IoT. They
información de
have
qué aspectos
information of what
económicos, sociales y
economic and
ambientales
social
pueden afectar
aspects
si
could
el Estado boliviano
affect
no empieza a
if the
respetar
Bolivian
ciertos
state does not
procesos
respect
normativos,
certain
¿no? de
regulatory
determinación de
processes of
esta explotación.
self-determination that these organizations have.
Y por tanto, en este momento
And
están en un
therefore,
proceso de
they are in this
reconstitución
process
y de hacer
of
un diálogo
reconstitution and
horizontal con el
having
Estado boliviano en lo
a
que se llama
dialogue with the state.
lo más central de este proceso de
The
diálogo
most
está
central
referido
part
al tema
is
agua.
referred
No
to
saben cuánto
the
agua va
water.
a usar
They don't know how much
esta
water they will
empresa para el proceso
take
de
for
industrialización
the industrialization process.
del proyecto que el Estado lo ha planteado, ¿no? Y segundo, es decir,
And
no
second,
conocen cuál
they
va a
don't
ser el
know
impacto
what
ambiental.
would be the
En este
environmental
momento, en
impact.
el diálogo que tienen las
At this
comunidades
point,
indígenas, hay una llamada de atención
there
al
is
ciclo de consumo
an
de agua
excessive
subterránea a partir
consumption
de la empresa San
of
Cristóbal.
water
Y
by the
la
company
industria
San
sabe que
Cristobal,
si San
and
Cristóbal
they
consume
believe
la
that if San
cantidad de agua que
Cristobal
piensan que con la
consumes
explotación del
this
litio
amount of water, they think that with
va a
the
ser
lithium
mucho mayor.
exploitation, the effect will
Entonces,
be
esos dos elementos en
even
este
stronger.
momento es,
So these
si
two
quiere, el núcleo
elements
articulador
are
de las
the
demandas para el diálogo. Uno, el
articulator for these
reconocimiento como
demands.
nación
The
del pueblo
first,
indígena
the
y la
recognition
capacidad de
how this
diálogo que pueden
worked,
tener
and
a
second, the
partir de
capacity of dialogue
cómo ellos se van a
based
beneficiar
on
de la
how they
explotación
will
y
benefit
cuánto
from
agua
this
van a usar.
exploitation and how much
Este tema lo
water
tendré yo
they
para
will
concluir.
take. I
Muchísimas gracias,
believe
Catalina.
this is all for now.
Muchas gracias, William. Muchas gracias por
Thank you
tu
very much,
intervención
William, for your
y la presentación de la
presentation
información de la extracción de litio en Bolivia y el proceso de resistencia que están
regarding
viviendo las
Bolivia
comunidades
and the
también en
process of
Bolivia.
resistance
Por
of the
último,
communities.
vamos a abordar
Lastly,
el
I would
último
like to
tema
we would
que
like
es
to talk about
el litio, la
lithium extraction in the international setting. We will have the participation of Marco Sorellana, rapporteur for toxic substances and human rights from the United Nations. Marco, you have 8 minutes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I would like to thank EarthRights International for the invitation to participate in this conversation. I'm from Marco Sorellana, the Special Rapporteur uh, um, on toxic substances and human rights. Is a special procedure created by the Council. Human rights is a procedure, an independent procedure that monitors and reports regarding the theme associated to toxics, contamination. And in this field, one of the tools that we have are the thematic reports. And in my next thematic report to the Council Human Rights in September, I will be covering the interface between decarbonization and policies to reduce carbon footprint and detoxification of the planet and the impacts of these policies. And I would like to mention that the imperative of decarbonization. We are facing a climatic emergency, and impacts have dangerous consequences on human rights. These the entity that gathers all this information shows that as humanity, we have overcome more than 1.1 degrees Celsius since the time of industrialization. Let's remember that the Agreement of Paris, what it searches is to stabilize the system through measures that do not exceed 1.5 degrees. The same IPCC, what it mentions is that we need reductions to 45% until 2030. Now, what are some implications of this? That we cannot have more exploration of new sources of hydrocarbons. We cannot have new fossil extraction or and especially in these juridical spaces. We have the opportunity of presenting this type of argumentation. The International Energy Agency have done this analysis. They highlight that to achieve the Paris Agreement, we cannot have new processes of this kind. Also, in the Federal Court of Alaska, where we are listening to a declaration against the authorization for a new hydrocarbon extraction project with great impact in terms of climate change, but also in terms of the rights of the community. So the status quo on the current situation is not an option. It is necessary to have structural changes in the energetic matrix, and this has an implication for the sources, transmission, storage systems, and the efficiency in the use. Some examples of that, we are seeing great investments source renewable energy, especially solar panels, the solar fields, eolic sources, and we are seeing a great emphasis in the narrative of what it means to have a fair transition. Now, in terms of storage, we have innovative technologies, many of them um, related to lithium, also cobalt and nickel, and other specialized metals. If we speak about the efficiency and the use of the energy, the emphasis on uh, linking economic growth or the increase of greenhouse effect gases. And that's how we do make it more efficient. Also, specific sectors, we are seeing that in the electrification of mobility, public policies, um, and for cars, for example, that use batteries. We are seeing some bottlenecks as well for this fair transition because many sources, new sources of green energy do not have transmission networks to be connected with the central networks in the countries, and we still need more infrastructure um, for new energies and reaching the consumers. But maybe what is concerning the most is the lack of attention to the new sources of dangerous materials. For example, the transition to lithium lead batteries that are used, for example, have generated environmental um, uh, difficulties. This problem hasn't been solved. It's a great challenge that we still have. And even though we haven't solved it, we're changing it for another, like the lithium or solar panels that have a great amount of metals that if released transform into toxics that threaten a series of basic rights. So the question, not against solar panels, but maybe anticipation of those transition. And we can see several points here. We see new materials when we haven't solved the problems of the fossils. I think Vito Calderon spoke about that with great emphasis, and we see in the world and Latin America the proliferation of areas are so contaminated, not only where the environment is sacrificed, but the legacy. I have had the opportunity of visiting places in the country, like Ventanilla, still areas with repercussions of contamination. So the legacy of contamination is really affecting uh, the and let's remember that the exposure to dangerous substances can break basic human rights, the right to health, to life, to personal integrity, to a clean environment, sustainable environment. As Francisco mentioned, the water, cultural uh, rights. So these are things that uh, should not be that should be considered, and also the ways of using materials. For example, the lithium batteries, because where are the measures for the anticipation of the new changes that this new technologies will bring, and the technological changes that are very quick? We can see that there are several governments that are raising environmental protection to accelerate transition, defining it as essential minerals or transition minerals. Um, but in this point, I would like to emphasize that public interest is defined in the base of the respect to human rights. What we see are several campaigns. Fossils are promoting campaigns to increase and visualize the impacts of renewable energies, but we see that nuclear energy, uranium, is also promoting a revitalization of this sector, even though until now there are no feasible solutions for the radioactive waste, apart from the catastrophic risks in the nuclear plants. The disaster in Fukushima, for example, it's current because of the decision of Japan of releasing contaminated waters to the ocean, or what we see in Ukraine and the invasion to Ukraine and the problems in the Zaporizhia Central. So these impacts fall with more strength over indigenous communities. We could speak about hydrogen, blue hydrogen, plastics, but I would like to cover only 4 points. Even though we face the imperative of a structural change, it cannot affect the planet. Second, to have a fair transition to save transition, they need to integrate public policies built based on the respect for human rights. Third, and the impact of these new technologies should consider the life cycle, not only the reduction of greenhouse gases and a positive idea. We have an opportunity of doing things right and anticipating impacts, anticipating risks, but also we face inertia, corporate capture, and uh, governance issues that have generated so many impacts in the world. Well, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Thank you very much, Marco, and thank you very much for your presentation. If we understand that you have another event at this time, if you can stay, it's great, and if you have to leave, well, we thank you for your participation and for being in this webinar. We're with sharing with Chile, Bolivia, and Peru. Now we are going to go to Viviana Herrera, representative of a member of Mining Watch Canada. Viviana, you have 8 minutes. Thank you very much, Catherine, and good afternoon to all of you. And congratulations to DHUMA and EarthRights. To begin, I would like to, well, given that I work in Canada and I'm based on Montreal, I was invited to give a perspective of the Canadian perspective. So please, I believe you are sharing my presentation. Yes, thank you.
Perdón, estoy intentando compartir.
I'm
Una
trying to
diapositiva,
share.
por favor.
Just a second.
Ya está.
Gracias. Si le puedes dar
If you could,
presentación completa,
uh,
¿sí? Ok, bueno.
put it in
Pero
full
no
screen.
estoy viendo
Thank you.
la
Okay, I'm
la
looking at
pantalla
the format or the screen for the speaker.
A ver.
Pero está bien, si no se puede,
But if we can change it, it's
esa forma de
okay.
ver la presentación está bien. Sí, yo creo que podemos dejarla ahí para... Listo, yo creo que
Sí.
está bien. Bueno, gracias. Entonces, como decía, siguiente...
So I was saying,
diapositiva, por favor.
next slide, please.
Entonces, voy a dar un
I am going
resumen
to
muy breve
give
sobre
you
Canadá.
a brief
Es importante decir
context
que Canadá es
of
un país
Canada. It's important to mention that Canada is a mining country. We are an economy that depends on extraction.
47% de las empresas
47% of the mining companies have
la mayoría
their
de esas compañías
headquarters in Canada. Most of them, as you can see in the map, are located in America, South America.
De hecho, Perú es el quinto destino para la minería canadiense en el
Actually,
exterior.
Peru
Algo muy significativo.
is one of the most important destinations in terms of mining, and something that we see as the fifth country after US, Chile, Panama, and Brazil. And Canada has a big influence on other countries to promote mining. And this is quite evident in this map. It's important to have it take into account at the time of speaking of Canadian mining, given all the scenario and the promotion by the Canadian government. So in this presentation, what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on the discourses used by the government and or companies to promote mining and the transition. I'm not going to go into deep and the studies that we've done, but what we see is that the trends that we see are that conflict that intensify in Latin America.
No sé quién soy yo la que está sonando eso. Perdón, creo que es una alarma. Me disculpo. Ok, perdón por eso.
Excuse me.
Como estaba diciendo,
So as I was saying, what we can see in these reports is conflict related to the energetic transition. And what we were able to see in this report is that, progress during the pandemic, which forced the communities to defend themselves while they protected themselves from COVID. So one of the things to take into account is the promotion of the mining extraction that is intensifying the extraction of critical minerals or and critical metals necessary for the construction of a transition, solar and building, for example, solar panels. But when I speak about critical metals and minerals, I mean the questions by the communities that make very key questions, um, which are critical metals for what, for whom, and at what environmental cost. That is important to take into account when we hear governments and corporations using this word critical, because we know that behind this there is a corporate interest in capitalizing the urgency that exists in the fight for against climate change. So countries of Canada have been very good at this. The Canadian government has been trying to position the country as a source of this critical metals, promoting massive investments for this transition through public policies. During the pandemic of COVID-19, what we were able to see it was that the Canadian government stated that these minerals were part of the recuperation plan. A similar trend that I imagine uh, that you were able to see in your countries during the pandemic. That is how different governments used this argument to promote lithium, copper, and mining. So in that way, we justify this mining as an economic opportunity. As you were able to see, the Canadian government promotes this openly. During the beginning of this year, the Minister of Human Resources gave a or said that during a convention, the minister said, and I quote, critical minerals represent an economic importance. The government promotes openly, excuse me, Canada is consolidating uh, the, its position in the mining industry, and the federal government is committed. As you were able to see, the emphasis here is in an opportunity, economic opportunity, how we could benefit from this climatic situation. Also, we were able to see that the green economy and sustainable economy discourses are used to clean the image and companies present as the owners of the solution to the climatic crisis and expecting to sell to their investors the promise that their projects will be profitable in the next decades due to the necessity of this critical materials to build these technologies and mitigate climate change. This is the case of Makusani. As our colleagues mentioned, Makusani is a junior company based on Vancouver, Canada, and their webpage is literally painted green. In different spaces, they reinforce the idea that they are in a position, ideal position to capitalize the demand for lithium and to projects that could support decarbonization and electric cars, mentioning that this could be beneficial for the growth of the demand of critical minerals. So governments and industries promote a transition that has as a focus to increase this demand, but do not take us to rethink about the models or that allow us to have a more responsible future that's fair and that's sustainable and that is inclusive, as Marcos said. Um,
y que no suponga una profundización de la crisis ambiental y climática, que es la que nos ha traído a este modelo.
and do not lead us into the situation of extractivism.
Ok, la siguiente. Ok.
And the next one?
No, la anterior, perdón.
Oh, the previous one, excuse me.
Sí, esa. Entonces,
yes. So it is important to remember that these projects are they're not different in their extraction processes as the other mines in operation. Many of these proposed projects work on hotspots or biodiversity spaces, as in Chile, Bolivia, and glacier areas of Peru, and social areas of social importance, as well as in sacred spaces, violating collective rights and the right to say no. And that's why communities state and don't want to be sacrificed. Like we heard from Vito, the Macusani project is not exception to this. Project is accused of putting in risk the population, and I know that I am over time now.
Un minuto.
1 minute. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very brief, and maybe we could cover this on the question area, but only to say that Canada is the biggest stakeholder in mining, but it lacks of a juridical framework to regulate its activities. That is, to regulate the activities of the companies that contaminate and violate human rights. The Canadian government has established several accountability measures, but these do not work, and they are pure formalities to say that we've done something, but they do not work. This is evident in the sense that there's still impunity for the companies affected and that are accused of violating rights and contaminating. As I was saying, I'm not going to get into details, but we can speak about this later. Giving this lack of real mechanisms for accountability in Canada, a coalition of organization of civil society and that we make part of, we are proposing a law, a bylaw that we're promoting among congressmen. This law would be important because it can prevent the damages caused by companies, but also to provide a space and access to justice to people that have been affected by Canadian companies, something that does not exist at this point. Thank you. And last slide. So apart from that, I think our experience throughout the years, what we can see is that the biggest defense is the defense in the territory. Thanks to the campaigns, we have been able to stop projects temporarily or permanently. These campaigns report companies finding that they don't have the permissions or there's lack of transparency in a way that we could report the projects among the donors or the funders.
Sin entrar en detalle,
And
solamente
without getting into details, I would like to put these two pictures of these communities. After 20 years, they were able to stop a Canadian project, and also we have the Tom people in the Ecuadorian Amazon that for more than 20 years have been defending their territory. But as the communities know, this is a very long fight.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Viviana.
Thank you, Viviana.
Hemos empezado un poco tarde.
We have started a little bit late, and that's why we are running a little bit late. Thank you very much to all the panelists for their presentations and for this socialization in this webinar. We have identified some of the questions, especially for Wyatt. So the first question is for Wyatt, and is the following. Could you provide more information about the mining companies? Do you have any other assets? And do they intervene in other if projects with the objective of selling the minerals afterwards? Why do you have 2 minutes to answer this question?
Thank you, Capi. Yeah, and maybe Viviana has information as well on the companies involved. She can chime in if she wants to. So American Lithium only has 3 principal properties, right? So the Falciani project in Peru, the Macusani project, which is the uranium project, also in Peru, both in Puno. And then in Nevada, they also have a lithium claim called the Topana lithium claim. And that site is about 3 hours from a giga battery factory. So those are the only 3 properties they have. So they're not a global company. And Viviana mentioned that they're a junior company. So I think that's all the assets they have, and because they don't have a big track record, it's hard to say what their behavior was in terms of best practices before that. They're registered on some venture capital stock exchanges, both in Canada as well as I believe in Germany. So that's a little more information on American Lithium.
Gracias, Wyatt.
Thank you very much. The next question, is there any standard for responsible mining projects called Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, IRMA, and a project from the Albemarle company in Chile that was certified with that were certified with IRMA. Does it bring any change? And that question is for Francisco.
Sí, se
2
escucha.
minutos, por favor.
Ok. Bueno, en realidad todas estas normas, certificaciones.
Well, all these norms and certifications, of course, they have a base, but in the end, this does not solve the problem. In terms of regulatory, in regulatory terms, they have many issues. And the other thing is that certification is not, the certification is like a checklist. Well, we don't understand this. Same company has been sanctioned for not complying with the resolutions locally. So they have a demand for damages, environmental damages. So when you have two scenarios of that kind, you can see that it does not help. Of course, it might help with the social level, but the impact is currently very, uh, very grave. So they do not, well, there's no legislation for an adequate control of what it's being done by the different companies nowadays.
Gracias, Francisco.
Thank you,
También
Francisco. And
Francisco
the
nos envía
audience
otra
has left
pregunta
a comment for Bolivia,
dice lo siguiente,
and
¿no?
it
En
says,
Bolivia el gobierno está por sacrificar el
the
cedro
government is
a los
about
pastos
to
grandes para
sacrifice
acabar
Pastor
con las
Granza for the
antiguas realizaciones
exploitation and industrialization of
legales
lithium, which
además de
is
la liberación
dangerous
de la
apart
minería de
from
permisos, el
the
gobierno está mandando
permissions
para la
that the
explotación del oro
government is generating for
partidario.
all
Este
gold
comentario
exploitation.
será enviado
This has been
en
sent
la sección de preguntas y
in
respuestas
the
y no
comment
sé si hay algún
section, and
comentario
I don't know if
adicional
it's
a
there,
este
and
tema,
if it's there is
Williams.
a additional comment.
Por el tema del tiempo,
Yes,
no solo se está
not
vulnerando
only they're violating
esta área, ¿no? de litio,
this
sino
area, but
derechos fundamentales de los pueblos
basic
indígenas, ¿no?
rights
Libre
like
determinación,
free
autodeterminación,
determination or
derechos a la vida
self-determination,
saludable.
the previous
Pero lo que hay que
consultation.
entender es que el
What we need to
gobierno
understand
tiene
is
un
that the
equilibrio
government has
desde los distintos niveles de gobierno, desde el gobierno
control at the
municipal,
different
el
levels,
gobierno
the
local, el
municipal,
gobierno departamental y
local,
el, digamos, el
department
más grande a
level,
nivel nacional.
and the
Como les
national level.
comentaba, en la zona existen dos
As I was
aspectos
saying, in
fundamentales.
the area,
Campesinas
they
indígenas,
are
una que va
indigenous
muy
companies,
ligado
one that is
directamente al
related to the
desarrollo.
government,
Entonces, esas
and
acciones le
those
permitirían vulnerar
actions
convenciones
allow them
internacionales,
to
etcétera.
break
Pero
international
todavía
conventions,
no existe algún pronunciamiento respecto a este tema.
but there's still
Hay un
no
nivel de conciencia,
um,
esa conciencia poco a poco la nación LIPE se está haciendo.
or
Eso es lo que podría yo en este momento
level
decir.
of awareness.
Gracias, gracias, Williams. Y
Thank you,
también
Williams. And
tenemos
also they
una pregunta
send
desde
a
la
question
plataforma
in the
de transmisión en vivo
live
desde
stream
la plataforma
from
de Derechos, Humanos y Medio Ambiente.
Human Rights and
La pregunta
Environment.
y el
And the
comentario es el
question and
siguiente.
the comment is the
En
following.
Perú se
In
escucha
Peru,
reclamos
we hear
que
complaints
relacionan el
that
secuestro o la
relate social
comercialización del
license
procesamiento
with
de litio en
the
diferentes
request
pasos de la
of
cadena de producción se
lithium,
haga en el país para captar
and
una parte del
that
valor
we
agregado.
could
Dos preguntas. Frente a
attract
la
part of the added
competencia
value
de países
of
como
lithium
Australia
extraction.
y otros
Now,
países, ¿es
comparing,
factible
is it feasible given
llevar
the competition with other
a
countries?
debate esto, ¿no? Y este procesamiento de
And
litio tiene
this
también
lithium
beneficios
processing, it
productivos o
has
tienen impactos
brought
ambientales. Esta
environmental
pregunta
impacts.
será
This is
sobre
a
Vito
question for
o
Vito
si también nos
or
puede responder
for
Wyatt.
Wyatt. Considering that Vito had a question about, excuse me, technical difficulty, uh, I think Wyatt could comment on this question.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll try my best. So in Peru, the government issued a supreme decree declaring lithium extraction in the national interest, including industrialization. So kind of what the participant is talking about, trying to get more of the value added of the mineral rather than just the primary resource. The general manager of Makusani Yellowcake has stated publicly that kind of this idea of building in processing plants, alongside the mine is going to be in the long run because investors don't want any major hiccups. So that kind of casts doubt on the likelihood or urgency that will occur anytime soon. And the project seems to be responding mostly to, the desire for investors to turn a profit. In terms of environmental impacts on processing, I'm not an environmental engineer, and I can't really speak to that, but I understand that processing lithium also creates a whole another set of impacts.
Gracias, muchas gracias, Wyatt.
Thank you very much, Wyatt. Well, thank you very much to all the panelists for their presentations and socialization of this space. We apologize to the participants for going over time. This is given the fact that we have started a little late. As you know, in this webinar, we have people from Bolivia, Chile, United States, and Peru. So, as a conclusion, we can say that the discussions and efforts for the transition from fossils to renewable energies with the purpose of reducing the greenhouse gases, which are in the core of the climatic discussion, are promoting an increase of the demand for lithium, as we have stated, with the exploitation of this. We can state that the fever for this type of minerals threatens a and the environment, and the recovery of lithium in Peru will reconfigure the triangle of lithium conformed by Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. And as we've said, and as it has been mentioned, the Peruvian state is promoting the regulatory framework that guarantees the exploitation of lithium in Puno without proposing a framework that protects the rights of the community and that covers the issue of the presence of uranium. In that sense, the webinar performed today proposes or has as an objective to generate a space for the discussion, socialization of information that allows the audience to know information related to the impacts of extraction of lithium in the cases of Chile, Bolivia, and what are the impacts that of the exploration of lithium in Puno. I would like to conclude this webinar thanking each one of the panelists for their participation, and also to thank each one of the people that have made possible this webinar. The comms teams of the different institutions, the comms teams of the Amazon program, comms team from the US, and comms team from Derechos, Humanos, Medio, Ambiente, and each one of the organizations that we have coordinated with to have contact with the panelists that have been present today. Thank you very much to all of you. And thank you very much to the people that participated as attendees. And this is the first webinar that we are generating to have this type of discussions at the regional level. And we hope to have your participation in other events. Thank you very much. And with this last intervention, we close this webinar. Thank you. Thank you.